Hello. I'm back off camera today. I've been moving around very, very slowly today. And I just didn't feel like getting all dolled up to go on stream. So I thought, okay, back to this. All right, you guys, we have got quite a lot of ground to cover. Hello, Beth. Hello, my darling. How are you? My darling was directed at Negz, not you, Beth. I'm sorry. I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but you know, it's my Negz. So I just wanted to get started with a little message to that idiot Fresh Garbage. Garbage, didn't you do like 7 hours worth of streaming or more over the course of an entire evening? Where you made it sound like Negz's chat and his community are basically the equivalent of like a KKK meeting. What the fuck are you doing in Negz's chat? I'm not trying to tell you to leave. I'm not making that point. My question is, if we really are that bad, if all of us are terrible, and all of us are big old scary racists, and we are so awful, what the fuck are you doing in chat trying to get attention? I don't get it. And don't give me that bullshit about, oh, you know, I go where I want. Okay, Russ, we get it. I'm just asking for you to explain yourself. You don't want anyone to show support. But on the other hand, you're in there, you know, fishing for attention from everybody. You're pathetic. You're an absolute joke. All right. That's it for Fresh Garbage. An utter and complete farce of a human being. But okay. Now, I want to go to the next thing. All right, you guys. Here's some funny shit, right? So yesterday I talked about how Savage got fired from that show that she had on LolCal Live, and I've gotten a little bit more information. Apparently, Savage decided that it was going to be a good idea to go into, I guess, their Discord and basically, like, threaten people. Now, we all saw the spectacle that Savage made out of herself when she decided to pull up in front of Bombshell's house, you know, where she was screaming through a bullhorn. And apparently she was trying to intimidate people in that community, including other hosts in the community. Threatening, she shared a picture of someone's house. Wow, who does that remind you of? And then she threatened to go IRL on someone, right? Okay, who does that remind you of? Pulling up in front of people's houses, intimidating them, threatening to sick her community on people. It's absolutely amazing, isn't it? And I found out one of the reasons why Savage was so unpopular on that particular show, whichever show it was that she was on. Now, you guys know who Tina is, right? She's part of that old angry grandpa community. And she's loud and she's vulgar and she has one leg and we know the whole story. Well, apparently Tina is quite popular with the audience. Tina is quite well liked by the audience. And it seems like the audience has grown very protective of Tina. Hello, Gata. Hello. You know, I can tell you I love the Waffle House and I have never witnessed a brawl at one. Thank God. I'm knocking on whatever this desk is made out of. But thank God. But anyway. So apparently Savage, and I did not know this, I was told this and I'm going to take it on face value. Apparently Savage decided to call Tina's son the N-word and call CPS on them. Wow, isn't that interesting? Isn't that exactly what MFW did to your granddaughter, Savage? I seem to recall that that's what it was. And I also remember you, Savage, doing the rounds. Remember when MFW's ex-Orange was appearing on all those different panels and you were hopping on to warn him and say, you know, you've got to be careful with that bitch because she's very vindictive and she'll call CPS on you and she'll do this, that, and the other thing. And then, of course, Savage, you bent the knee to that bitch and you went to her because you had some crisis of fucking conscience, because you're a Christian or whatever, some horse shit. And you decided to go and bury the hatchet with the exact woman who had called your granddaughter that and had called CPS on you. So now I understand why you were so willing to let bygones be bygones, because this is exactly what you do. If I had known that a couple of years ago, I would have stayed as far away from you as possible. And I will say that I appreciate the fact that you're so protective of Pirate. I get that, and that's great. But you're a piece of shit, Savage. You go IRL. You're incredibly vindictive, right? You're a CPS caller, a false CPS caller, apparently. And now you've decided in your late 40s, or however old you are, to start pulling up in front of people's houses. And not only that, but listen, Negz, this is what I was told. That she had some sort of beef with Tina years ago, and that Tina's not willing to let it go, and neither is fucking Savage, okay? So if I'm wrong, I will correct myself. But I trust the person who told me. And hey, all that I know about you, Savage, is that you went to the woman, and this is verified, you went to the woman who called CPS on your granddaughter and called your granddaughter a racial slur, and then when Negz got upset about it and I got upset about it, you decided that you were going to drag us on your panel. Well, go fuck yourself. Oh, really? There you go. So another piece of shit who runs around contacting the authorities about people that she doesn't like. And apparently Keemstar got a hold of that clip of Savage in front of Bombshell's house. And that was like the last straw, because it was proof that she does in fact pull up and go IRL on people. Savage. Savage, you know, this is what I don't get about you. You know what? I'll save it for later. I want to play you guys a little bit of the Lolcow Queens taking a victory lap when Savage got fired. Now, you know that I do not do trigger warnings on this channel. I don't believe in trigger warnings, but I do want to let you guys know that what I am going to show in this video, and there is a little screenshot of it, is so fucking cringy and so goddamned embarrassing that you might want to get a little bit of support for your back. Put your shoulders back, okay? You might want to put your hands on the armrests or on the desk so that when I show this cringy fucking screenshot, your spine won't implode from the cringe. All right, so let's bring this up. I'm going to play a bit of this. This is Becky on the left and Tina on the right. And let's, where is it? Okay, it's called Savage Gets Fired. Okay, let's go.
Becky does. Guess who still got a job? Tina does. Tina does. Guess who gone? Guess who gone?
Cabbage.
That's right. That's right.
Hi,
so
Roya.
today is a day of celebration. The witch is gone.
Oh, she said, what'd you say? Celebration.
Celebration. I don't know what language that is, but I'm sure it's one. Oh my God, Anon. Gifting 20 memberships. Holy shit. Right out the gate, you guys. Oh my God,
Mary super chatted $100. Party time.
I warned everybody.
Now she's fired. Don't go far. What a sight. Oh no. Pirate ground.
Okay, a lot of celebration.
But who's the one who is accepting money to flash her cooch in
Oh,
somebody's
here we
face?
go. Oh, yes. Here we go, you guys.
I'm good.
Prepare.
For those who picked
look
the... Go ahead.
Look at Mike's face where she had her whole fucking cabbage in his face. She got off a plane, didn't even wash, walked up to a party that was already started, and stuck her cabbage in my fucking face.
Last warning.
Bro, let me pull up the picture again. In case anyone missed it. In case anyone missed it, where'd it go?
Mike
This.
was stunned.
Wow,
He
you
was
guys.
like, damn, is anything
This.
gonna crawl out of there?
Wow, Savage. Savage. Wow, Savage. So you went up to that fat, disgusting fuck, kid behind a camera. You grabbed your ciggies. What did you do? Take your panties off? You did a little striptease? What did you do to prepare for this? And you stuck your twat in his face? This is what you did. A married woman, a grandma. That's okay. If you're a grandma, you can still be young at heart, right? A married fucking woman. And apparently, spouses, I guess, were not allowed to attend. Or at least her spouse didn't attend. I guess Kelly was allowed to be there because she's Wings' wife. Savage, you know, you work in a profession that is highly skilled. You went to school, you got a license, and you have been in this profession for a number of years. And you decided that you were going to go on the internet and you were going to go ham. You stole, what is it? You stole tragedy pimps from Negz. You stole that term from him. And you decided that you were going to go ham sandwich. You were part of the drama community, which is probably one of the worst communities ever to exist on YouTube. And then you joined LolCow Live, and this is the shit that you're pulling. Really. And I understand that, I saw some of the men that were at this gathering, right? And it's not like, let's just say the pickings were slim, but you had to wave your genitalia in front of kid behind a camera. That's who you picked. Okay, let's go.
Look at this!
Wow, look at that, Negz. Take it in. Take it in. And you know what? I have seen Savage's husband, okay? And Savage's husband looks like the kind of guy who doesn't put up with mess. And this is some fucking mess right here. I am dying to know what Savage's husband had to say about this spectacle that she's made out of herself. What is this, Savage? Is this midlife crisis? Is this like, are you having a hard time with menopause? What happened to you? What happened to you? All right, let's finish up this part of it.
Look at that! Look
Unbelievable.
at this!
Wow.
Michael Green!
Ew.
Mike Green! What the fuck is this? You smelled some dirty booty holes!
All right.
God!
When you hire whores, they're ready to score.
You see,
Show those asses to the door.
You see, she saw me flirting with Mike. Now, isn't it funny that she
Ew.
called all sorts of people's whores and shit? But who's the one who is accepting money to flash her cooch in somebody's face?
Oh, there was money involved. There was money involved, so you got paid to remove your knickers and wave your twat in front of kid behind a camera's face and do that whole stripper move. Amazing. Savage. God damn it. What has happened to you? And I just want you all to know that I am being incredibly petty right now, and this is entirely personal. This is personal right now. Savage, I don't appreciate the fact that you came at me and Negz sideways after you bent the knee to MFW. We had every right to criticize you for that and call out your bullshit when just like a couple of weeks prior, you had been running around warning people about her behavior. And then you went and you buddied up to her. And yeah, we were pissed. And then you came at us hardcore. So watching you get fucking humiliated on the internet is a great personal joy to me. It could not have happened to a better person. You know, and I hadn't thought about this bitch in years. So seeing this play out the way it has, fucking hilarious, Savage.
I'm just fucking saying, not even accepting. I should say it better. Soliciting.
Oh.
Soliciting money. That would be accurate. Oh, it's Sweetie. Tina does not want you here, Sweetie.
No, get out, bitch. You're a traitor. Get your two-faced fucking...
All right, now there's going to be a lot of yelling, and you guys saw the screenshot. That's why I played that clip. Savage, I hope that this follows you around for the rest of your fucking life. And, you know, I'm not all about calling out people's ages and talking about you're too old for this. This behavior is so disgusting. I don't know what got into you, but I'm glad that it did. I'm glad that it did, because now, every time somebody brings up your name, people are going to refer back to that screenshot and you waving your twat in Michael Green's face. I love this for you. I really do. And if it is true that you were threatening to go IRL on the co-hosts, if it is true that you called CPS on Tina, wow. All right. All right, talk about classy. Wow, what a piece of shit you are, Savage. Oh, that felt good to say. All right. And speaking of CPS, so I finally found the clip that I'd been looking for. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody watching, but wasn't it sort of established at a certain point that we don't approve of people calling CPS out of spite? I thought that I heard that mentioned here, there, and everywhere. Didn't we agree that using CPS as a club to hit one of your internet rivals or enemies over the head with is not a good idea? Hi, Crafty. I thought that we had an understanding that bringing CPS or the cops into your stupid fucking internet squabbles is not a good idea. Well, somebody evidently disagrees. And I finally found the fucking clip I was looking for the other day.
Including kids.
Lies.
Okay, here is the Canadian whore. And I want you to listen to what she had to say. All right, let's go.
That's just
I do. I include kids.
I include kids.
Let me even think motherfucking twice. If I think a kid's if I can prove in my own mind.
If I can prove in my own mind. Now keep in mind that this woman hears voices. And she's a problem. Hi, Sin Eater. Nice to see you. But if she can prove in her own deranged, drug-addled, alcohol-soaked mind that there is a problem, then Katie, bar the door.
God damn, that kid's being abused. I will lie.
I will lie.
I will motherfucking lie.
Oh, you'll motherfucking lie, huh, Hecate? Is that right? You'll lie? So you decide that this is Hecate, Negz.
CPS, I sure will.
Oh.
Uh-huh. I don't give a fuck.
Let's go back.
Lie to CPS, I sure will.
I will lie to CPS?
Uh-huh. I don't give a fuck. If I think in my mind, oh my God, I saw that kid had a black eye on Thursday, but also I will fucking lie to CPS, bitch. I don't give a fuck.
I will lie to CPS, bitch. I don't give a fuck. Those are her words.
So what? What are you gonna do about it? CPS, that's what I do. Shut the fuck up.
Wow, who does that remind you of? Who does that remind you of? And don't bother typing the name in chat because the name is blocked. But I think we all know who I'm referring to. Again, I was under the impression that I was under the impression that we frowned on that sort of behavior. Not that we took the person and pumped them up and called them a breath of fresh air and promoted their channel and sang their praises so that we could tokenize that person and get them to wash us of our sins, right? That's what I thought. I thought that some people around here were principled, but apparently I was wrong. So all that I'm saying is that I do not approve of this behavior, and I don't think that any normal, civilized person, any person with a conscience, would sign off on this person. And I don't think that anyone with a conscience would promote this person, and certainly not call them a breath of fresh air. Right, Peanut? Right, Peanut? Is this the breath of fresh air that you had in mind? A person who hears voices and calls CPS, you know, and involves kids in her internet beefs? Okay. Well, Peanut, I had you clocked a long time ago, so nothing about you surprises me anymore. All right. It's a shame about your audience, though. It's a shame that people aren't a little bit more, how should I put it, discriminating when it comes to who they support. But there's your breath of fresh air, guys. All right. Now, we're going to move on to the next thing. Now, hi, Rachel. Good to see you. Do you have any more recommendations for us today? Because I swear to God, the first thing that I think of when you enter the chat is, I wonder what Rachel watched. Because I know that if she recommends it, it's going to be really good. So, all right. All right, so let's move on to the Frontier Airlines story. Now, I expressed my opinion of Frontier Air yesterday. You know what? I haven't seen it. And Cheryl was in here yesterday recommending the new documentary about the Judds. I can't find it anywhere. Oh my God, Raven. Raven, thank you. Okay, let me pull that up. Okay, so Zachary Michael is on a roll. I'm not going to put the Reddit post on screen, but apparently Zachary has been having some sort of a back and forth with a woman who has pica. Now, for those of you who don't know what pica is, it's basically a compulsion to eat things that don't have any nutritional value. If you've watched My Strange Addiction, you've seen examples of this. You know, people who eat rocks, people who eat dirt, you know, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I have had pica on and off, where I have had a compulsive ice chewing habit. But my understanding is that women who develop that habit are either iron deficient or vitamin D deficient. It's one of the two. I think it's iron. But my ice chewing habit was completely out of control at several points. Well, Zach, I'll just read this to you. Zach was following or reacting to a woman who has pica. And hang on, where is the Zachary Michael snark thread? And don't worry, it's not nearly as nasty or vicious as the H3H3 snark thread. It's basically people who just watch him and catalog the things that he does. Well, there's a woman, her name is Lisa, she's British, and she has pica. And apparently Zach was encouraging her to eat a sponge. Now, she ended up eating the sponge, and she uploaded a video to YouTube called something like, I ate a sponge for Zach, or I ate a sponge for Zachary Michael. And this is just like a regular, and there you go. So it is iron. Rachel, my God, You and I are from the same area. We both had pica. We both love the same kind of entertainment. I don't even know what to say. I think that we were separated at birth. So the woman took a sponge, like the kind of sponge that you use, I guess, in the bath, or I don't know if it was a dishwashing sponge or whatever. She ate the fucking sponge. She recorded a video and she uploaded it to YouTube. Now, I have to say that encouraging somebody with pica to eat something that could actually harm them, and yes, eating a sponge could harm you. You could choke on it. There are all kinds of issues that you could get by eating a sponge. But I think really it's more than that. It's the cruelty of encouraging a mentally ill person to do something that could harm them for your own amusement. You know? Zach, have you met Owl by any chance? Owl likes to exploit mentally ill people for money too. And apparently they lied. Zach lied and said that this Lisa woman had dropped the N-bomb and she was a racist. Apparently it was a lie. And the conventional wisdom is that this woman has a very thick accent and they couldn't understand what she was saying. So they decided that they would be justified in telling her to eat a sponge to get their yucks or to get revenge on an evil racist on YouTube. I don't know. Zach, what a piece of shit you are, okay? The therapy is not making a dent. It's not making a dent. You have become a very cruel, exploitative individual. And I'm sorry, hi Shadow, I'm sorry that your views are tanking now that you've decided to move on from Amberlynn Reed because she gave you a little itty bitty bit of clapback and you couldn't take it, so you moved on. So now you're what? You're going to exploit mentally ill people? Well, you have been. But you're going to encourage people to engage in self-harm on the platform so that you and your gross audience can have a laugh. Amazing. All right, so let's move on to this Frontier Airlines story, which I think is hysterical. And I told you guys that I made the huge mistake of when Negz and I were planning on going to Vegas in 23 for my birthday. I was in charge of making all the travel arrangements, and I went on Orbitz and I booked flights on Frontier. And then after I did that, because the price was so low, it was really, really a bargain. And I thought, well, this is good. And I've never flown Frontier or Spirit, but I understand that they're, you know, pretty much joined at the hip. They both have terrible customer service. If you see a fight break out on a plane, it's usually Spirit. But Frontier is terrible, and what they do is they sell you a ticket, like the face value of the ticket is very low, but then they charge you for everything individually. And they also did something very shady, which is, you know that cubicle that they have by the ticketing area where you can put your carry-on in and determine whether or not it'll fit in the overhead bin? Well, apparently Frontier messed with their container thingy, and it's smaller than it is with other airlines, and so they soak you on that too. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, twin children of the same mother apparently, and that's a long flight too. Wow, BWI to LAX, that is a long flight to be stuck on a shitty airline. And so what I did was they said you have to go on the Frontier website and you have to do this, and this. You have to pay to choose your seat. You have to pay to check your bags. You have to pay for a ticketing agent to take care of you at the counter. Every single thing that you are supposed to be given on a flight, you know, that you thought would be covered in the face value of the ticket, it's all a la carte, all of it. So by the time you finish adding on all these separate charges, you might as well fly Delta or American. There's literally no point in flying these shitty airlines unless you're going to get your ticket in advance, get on the plane with a purse, and, you know, no baggage of any kind. Forget it. They're not worth it. And also, Frontier's takeoff and landing on time schedule is abysmal. And that was something else that I discovered. So I canceled the tickets and I booked us on American, and that was the end of that. All right, so this is Actual Justice Warrior, who did a hilarious video about this, and it's about Frontier's horrendous customer service. Let's go.
They made that flight. You did. And you think, you're going to check me in. I bet you we won't. Okay?
I paid for a ticket.
And you didn't pay $25 for agent assistant, and you checked in 3 hours later. Hello.
I just said that
I. You get on your flight.
Yeah, I just said that I would pay the $25.
And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight. And you thought you was going to get on your flight.
I literally paid for a ticket. I'm here 30 minutes. I'm here 30 minutes before my flight.
So what you're witnessing right here is a viral clip at a Frontier Airlines counter of now fired contractors for the airline.
You know what? This reminds me of that amazing Cedric the Entertainer joke from the original Kings of Comedy, where he was talking specifically about black people, but this is something that I think that we can apply to this situation, where he's like, we operate, he said, white people operate on the attitude of I wish, I hope, blah, blah, blah. Or no, he said, I'm going to mess it up. But basically he said that black people operate on the principle of, I wish you would. Well, you know what, Cedric? It's not just black people who operate on that principle. Because I swear to fucking God, if I get to an airport and I am treated this way by a ticketing agent, all I can say is, I wish you would talk to me in that tone. I wish you would be this rude to me. I wish you would. So, you see, we can all share that. Let's go.
Refusing to let a man check into his flight due to the fact that they originally had a dispute over a $25 fee, which, by the way, these allegedly discount airlines in the United States of America are notorious for, that the man has decided to concede on, but in their opinion, he disrespected, he crossed the line, so they decided to go full ghetto on him, and as if you didn't need any more proof of their...
Okay, so now I guess that the floodgates have been opened and we're allowed to use the term ghetto. All right. Thanks for letting us know. And by the way, ghetto is not a racial thing. Ghetto can be applied to every race. I mean, usually we say white trash or whatever. But ghetto behavior is ghetto behavior. We all know what the fuck it is. It really doesn't have to do with race. It just has to do with a certain type of shitty attitude, right? Let's continue.
Lack of intelligence. They're filming this from their side because they thought this would make a video that actually made them look good. Now, of course, this is obviously people in a customer service position refusing to do customer service.
Right.
And it ultimately ended up costing this man making his flight. It ended up costing these women their jobs.
Oh, well.
And weirdly enough, even though this is an extreme, egregious example of piss poor behavior by these contractors, Frontier Airlines didn't really apologize to the man, and we all know, had the situation been flipped, had you had black women against a white man or anybody that was not a black person on the other side of the counter.
And to be clear, okay, there was a white guy behind the counter, and I think that he was an actual Frontier employee, and he was just as bad as these women. He was just as bad. He was horrible. Because towards the end, I don't know if Sean plays it in this video, but the customer is saying, well, that's it. I'm never going to fly Frontier again. And the white customer service guy gave him an enormous amount of lip and was a giant dick to him. So I hope that they were all fired. Not just the women, but that guy who was a giant asshole. All right, let's continue.
This would be deemed a viral racial incident. But of course, it's the United States of America, so we're going to have this situation where obviously these people deserve to be fired. Right. Obviously, this person deserves to be compensated. And all it's really going to do is not lead to an apology, but it's going to lead to everybody understanding that you definitely shouldn't fly Frontier Airlines. And by the way, I know I have some European viewers out there in the audience, and I just want to say I've flown the discount airlines in Europe. I've flown Ryanair, to be specific.
Oh, Crochetter, you hear that? Ryanair. You were just talking about Ryanair the other day, and now Sean has flown Ryanair.
And guess what? That model 100% works over there. The people behind the counter are professional over there. But for whatever reason, the United States of America...
Sean, come on. Let's not exaggerate. Ryanair is a terrible airline. The only clips, and I get it, these are, it's the dramatic clips that make it around, but I'm constantly seeing brawls on Ryanair. I'm seeing people misbehaving on the plane. I mean, no, Ryanair, forget it. And Crochetter can attest to this.
When it comes to Frontier and Spirit, by the way, two companies that have tried repeatedly to merge with one another just so they can combine the absolute worst of the worst in terms of airlines, always seem to have these situations emerge, always seem to have this piss poor customer service, and oftentimes these are the airlines where we see brawls in and around the plane because that's just the kind of energy they're attracting. So if you're ever in a situation where you think you're going to save a buck by getting on these flights, first and foremost, you will be wiped out with the fees, but in addition to that, you will also get this piss poor customer service and won't even get an apology for it. But we're gonna...
And again, I keep on reiterating this. I'm serious. The tickets were so cheap, and by the time you end up adding up all the fees, you literally are paying as much as you would pay to fly coach on American, Delta, JetBlue, any of these other airlines. So do not fly Frontier or Spirit. Don't do it. Spend a little extra money and just, you'll get there. And as a matter of fact, I think I told you this story too, that when Negz and I were waiting for our flight to leave, Frontier was still sending me updates on the flight that we were supposed to be on. And the flight was delayed by like 12 hours. 12-hour delay. Can you imagine? I can only imagine Negz and I sitting in the airport. I mean, listen, trust me when I say we would not have been sitting in the fucking airport for 12 hours, okay? But how can you run an airline that runs this way? I don't get it. It's awful. Let's continue.
We're going to break down this whole entire video. We're going to talk about another famous incident of an airport kerfuffle, and we're going to do all that. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give you?
You know what, Rachel? I'm glad you mentioned the word list because there was something I was going to say. So I guess that you all heard by now. that Hassan had an incident when he was, I guess, coming back into the United States. Here's my thoughts on it. Hassan gave the impression that he was put in handcuffs and he was taken off and waterboarded, basically. And they asked him a lot of questions about his content and blah, 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 blah. This is what is known as a secondary screening, okay? And my thought on this is that Hassan has been put on a list. I think that DHS has gotten a lot of notifications about him. He encouraged people to shoot a sitting United States Senator, Rick Scott. He has shown terrorist propaganda on his channel. He has boasted about it. He featured an actual Houthi terrorist on his channel and then lied and said that the guy wasn't a terrorist, even though the guy provided footage of himself boarding a fucking ship and taking hostages. So I think that Hassan needs to plan to be inconvenienced when he travels from now on, because I'm sorry, dude, you know, you got a problem. You got a problem. But anyway, so that's why the word list triggered it. But let's continue.
Give me the money, okay?
And they're not letting me check in.
And you're not getting on your
Because
flight.
it's a policy. We don't control that.
You will never fly
You were
on
about to
Frontier
let me
unless-
check in. You were about to let me check in,
Oh,
and you decided that you ain't gonna let me check in.
Make me check you in.
Make
So
me
look, I
check
already
you
know
in.
based on the fact that there are 3 black women behind this counter, they have horrible, terrible attitudes throughout the whole course of this encounter, and they're dumb enough to actually film this encounter as if they're in the right.
Right, Rachel?
That some of you out there in the audience are going to immediately attribute this to race. But make no mistake about it, ghetto is a mindset.
Exactly.
It is a cultural phenomenon
Yep.
in the United States of America.
Yep.
And just because you're a black woman in a customer service position does not mean in any way, shape, or form that you act like this, that you perform your duties like this, that you're this quick to anger. And in reality, I think this is more to do with the ghetto culture they bring with them to the table in this particular position. And of course, the ghetto culture that discount airlines in the United States of America seem to operate with. Again, when we see fights break out, they're usually on Spirit flight. For whatever reason, these types of airlines that try to nickel and dime you with excessive fees tend to hire these kind of people to be behind the counter.
Of
And
course.
that is what we're witnessing on display right here.
Of course, they're not going to hire professionals. Are you kidding? You know, they're nickel and diming every aspect of the flight experience, whether it's Spirit or Frontier. So, of course, they're not going to bring in people to treat you like an actual human being when you go to the counter. Wow, okay.
But I also want to add that Frontier as a company didn't really issue this guy an apology. They did refund his money.
As a matter of fact, it is a term from Italy, Crochetter. And the term ghetto was first coined to describe the area where the Jews were forced to live. Thanks to the Catholic Church, among others. But yeah, the original ghettos, and it is an Italian word, were put together to house Jews. So how about all that cultural appropriation, you guys? Listen, I'm going to speak on behalf of all Jews. You can have it, all right? You can have the word. You can take it. We don't want it. We're leaving that shit behind.
They did let go of these people, but essentially in their statement following this interaction, they said, oh, well, these are just independent contractors. They're not really employees of Frontier, and we have canceled their contracts. And again, something about hiring your regular ordinary staff as independent contractors, in my opinion, is one of the things that leads to these piss poor results.
Right.
But again, this interaction goes on.
You literally work for a company that I bought a plane ticket for. I'm here 30 minutes before the
Can you
flight.
please leave, sir?
No,
Make
Can
me
you please
check
leave
you
my
in.
personal space?
I'm not in your personal space.
You're in
This
my
is
face.
not
I
your
work
personal
here. This
space.
is my stationery.
This is not
I'm at
your
Frontier.
personal space.
Again, think about the absurdity of this particular situation. Yes, the guy was trying to get rid of a mandatory fee. He didn't want to pay it. It's totally understandable. But then you have this
No, Shadow. It's originally an Italian term. You can look it up. It's very interesting. You see, when you come over here, you learn something.
woman saying, make me check you in after
With
he
the
agrees
arms
to
crossed.
pay it. So after she won the argument, after she won this whole interaction, after the pressure was put on him in order to check into his flight, he decided to comply with this absurd fee. And then she's like, I'm not going to do it. Make me check you in. And then all of a sudden she starts playing the victim. She's like, get out of my personal space. You're in my face. You're the problem that is in this situation. And I really need you to leave. Again, this is somebody that you're supposed to talk to with your questions, with your specific issues to help you with check-in. That is quite literally her job.
You know what, Rachel, that's exactly right. You know, you need to know your limitations. Like, I know for myself, never in a million years could I work at the DMV. Never. Now, maybe the DMV here would be different. The DMV in Connersville is incredibly efficient. It's usually empty. The people are incredibly courteous. They bend over backwards to help you. They're willing to overlook the fact that you may not have all the documents that you need to get whatever it is that you want. And so it seems to me like they have a pretty easy go of it here. Totally opposite from the experience that you would have at the DMV in DC, which is like the ninth circle of hell. Let's continue.
But now she's playing the victim in this situation, and she's being enabled by multiple other people who are staff at Frontier Airlines, or independent contractors, as they describe them. And this is normal to her. Again, this is being filmed by their side of the interaction,
Yes, they
because
do.
they believe that they are in the right, that they are justified. This is the job training over at Frontier Airlines, which is one of the reasons why you should never fly this airline. These airlines should go completely out of business.
Yep.
And that's really unfortunate for me to say, because I want more competition in terms of flying.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if this is what you're putting up as staff, you deserve for your company to go completely under.
Agreed.
This is embarrassing.
Agreed.
And the fact that she's flashing the Frontier logo like, oh, I'm here, I'm an employee, I'm the boss, I'm entitled, you're not getting on your flight, to hell with you, because you're such a terrible person. And in reality, you're victimizing me by...
You know what, Rachel? It's funny that you commented that, because now that I remember it, I did live in Maryland for a brief period of time, and I had to go to the DMV in Montgomery County. And I thought, oh, Montgomery County DMV, it's a wealthy county. It's going to be efficient. No. No. Montgomery County makes you jump through hoops. The people at the Montgomery County DMV are incredibly rude. So, yeah, it's not just DC, but yeah, the whole area, it's a mess. I swear to God, that's one of the benefits of living in like a tiny little farm town, is that the people working at the DMV don't go to work every day thinking of ways that they can make your life a living hell. So it's very pleasant.
Trying to get the customer service from me that you're entitled to, because I'm an employee that's supposed to provide that service.
You work for a company. This is not your personal space.
We ain't gotta worry about it. We ain't gotta worry about it.
You don't have to worry about it. You're literally not doing your job for a customer that has paid for a plane ticket to get home.
Oh, you're in Calvert?
So here you have her saying, we don't got to worry about it. We don't got to worry about it. It's not our business. It's not like we work at Frontier and it's our job to check people in. We don't got to worry about it. And the guy is trying to explain to them what their job is. He's trying to explain to them in very simple, slow language,
right,
so they can understand it. But of course, the collective IQ behind this counter is extraordinarily low. It is definitely lower than room temperature. And this is how these people are operating. Now, I don't know where that bigger woman, the one that was the major problem in this interaction, ultimately ended up going, but I would...
Right, because apparently the beef started with the older lady who was like wandering behind the counter, and then these other two women stepped in and made everything worse.
Not be surprised if she decided to go get security to arrest this man,
of course,
for daring to try to pay the fee after negotiating or attempting to negotiate away the fee in order to get on his plane to go home. I mean, where the hell does he think he is? At an airport? What an absolute idiot. This
Correct.
is their domain. This is their personal space, and you need to beg and grovel for mercy if...
And you know what? I saw somebody else make a really good point. I think it was Xavier LaRousseau, or DuLaRousseau, I think that's his name, his last name. He basically made the point, I think it was him, that, listen, if you are flying Frontier, you're a cheapskate already, okay? You have decided to bypass all the other options that you have for flying. You've already gone through all the fucking grief of paying all these add-ons to get whatever it is that you want to get, whatever amenities, like a seat on the airline. You've already paid all these extra fees, so why are you trying to nickel and dime $25 when you know that this airline is going to soak you for every dime you have before your butt gets put in a seat on the plane? You know, and I thought that was a fair point, and I think that that's one of the downsides of working for one of these super low-budget airlines, is that you know that everybody who has booked a ticket on the flight is, you know, a tightwad and is probably going to give you a lot of grief. And, you know, when you're a tightwad and somebody's already given you grief, then you're going to start haggling over every single additional fee. You know, you're going to argue over a dime, a nickel, a quarter. And so, you know, I can't imagine that being a ticketing agent for one of these airlines is an easy job. But these women took it too far. And the guy should have flown American. You know, the end.
if you want any service from them, because they have been contracted out by Frontier Airlines, our crappy discount airline of the day. Again, absolute madness on display right here. And I just want to point out that even though this guy ended up uploading this video, obviously we can see that it's from his phone, they're filming it too. So they thought this was a good idea to put on their social media, that maybe they would get a GoFundMe on their behalf because they're standing up to the oppressor, the oppressive customer that dareth ask a customer service employee for some damn customer service.
Now, I haven't flown Southwest in a really long time, but the last time I flew the airline, you could not reserve your seat. Okay, so it was like a general admissions concert. You know, you line up, you get on the plane, you basically try to get the seat that you want, you know, totally unassigned seating. And it was a nightmare. Okay. And it could have been a bigger nightmare, except that the crew for Southwest, you know, they put on little shows and they tell jokes and they're very funny and they're pleasant and, you know, they kind of flirt with you. And so Southwest knows that there were certain inconveniences with flying that airline because the tickets were very, very inexpensive. But they try to make it up to you with the service that they offer you once you get on the plane. So that's the way that they would make it up to their beleaguered customers.
I'm literally here at Frontier. I bought a ticket and they are not letting me check in.
Listen, I know I said that this was a cultural thing and not a racial thing, and I want to make it clear, I 100% stand by that. But he just panned over to another employee.
Oh, here we go.
And I know he's doing the baggage check-in over there at that section of the airport, but the fact is, maybe you should talk to that sensible white guy over there. He looks a little bit older, and maybe, just maybe, he seems like he would understand that a customer service position is actually supposed to provide customer service rather than have this moment where they're standing up to you because they don't need your business, because they represent the company, and you're just a dumb idiot for expecting a decent experience or even a reasonably bad experience, because this is well beyond that, from Frontier Airlines.
For no reason whatsoever.
Well, you said you're never flying the airline again, so we might as well help you out and have you not fly the airline.
Okay, so you hear what the guy said? He said, well, you said you were never flying the airline again, so we might as well help you out. And basically block his boarding the plane. So this guy is wearing the Frontier shirt. Is he a Frontier employee or is he a contractor? What a shitty, nasty thing to say to a customer. How could you be even more fresh and rude to a customer than to say that to them? I hope this guy got fired too. I really do. What a nightmare. As if flying isn't enough of a hassle. And going to an airport isn't enough of a nightmare. And, you know, Crochetter has now fallen down the rabbit hole of watching body cam footage of people getting arrested at airports. And most of the time, it's white women who are drunk. They've been overserved, is the polite term. And I was telling Crochetter that two of my worst nightmares are A, having an incident at an airport when I am trying to catch a flight, or B, somebody going crazy on a plane and the plane having to turn around and land. You know, those are my two worst nightmares. So I cannot watch that body cam footage. It's too goddamn triggering.
Well, I've already bought a ticket.
And just when you thought Ryan Johnson was done impacting your life, here he is directing these Frontier Airlines staffers to subvert your expectations, because the white guy that I set up beautifully as potentially the sensible person in this altercation has decided to side with his fellow contractors, side with the ghetto trash culture over at Frontier Airlines, and stand up for their right to refuse him service, refuse him the ability to check in, because again, this is basically infecting affecting all of the staff that are contracted out at this particular airport. Again, older white guy says, well, you said you're not going to fly this airline due to the fact that we're being outrageous in terms of our customer service. Well, guess what? We're going to help you out right now by saying that you can't fly this time.
Amazing.
So, haha, what a great point. And honestly, I'm just going to say it for everybody out there. This guy should be fired too. Each and every one of these employees down the line should have their contracts terminated, because this is absolutely asinine. This is ridiculous. And again, even the...
And they should all be made examples of. Honestly, this clip is one of the worst PR blows to Frontier that I can imagine. Nobody wants to be treated this way when they go to a ticket counter. What the fuck is wrong with you people?
The allegedly potential sensible white guy has decided to betray us all, betray humanity by siding with the monsters behind the counter.
Right.
He is in fact the monster. Ryan Johnson has subverted our expectations once again, and honestly, we should all be ashamed of each and every one of these people over at Frontier Airlines, but also a little bit ashamed of this person for booking a flight with them, because we all understand that they have the worst customer service.
Right.
I've literally already bought a ticket, and this is your reaction.
So right there, the video ends, and as I told you, what we ended up discovering is that the contractors were fired. Frontier Airlines didn't really issue an apology, but it seems like this guy got his money back. But of course, if he had to fly back for an important event, something work-related or something of the sort, he ends up getting completely screwed over by this airline in multiple different ways. So a basic apology from Frontier, in my opinion, should be warranted. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't situations where airport staff don't have to deal with belligerent customers. In fact, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks had a notoriously bad incident with American Airlines where he screamed at employees like an absolute madman, live streamed it on his own channel, and then ultimately was booted from the plane when it eventually arrived.
Beautiful.
Well, it's not funny anymore. Now we've been here 3 hours, and American Airlines sucks. They decided, for whatever reason, to screw everybody on this flight. It's not like there was one plane that was here and it developed like a mechanical problem. Okay, that happens. I get it, right? Everybody gets it. No, they just decided to f*** this Miami flight. So everybody who's on it...
Hey, Negz, are you still here? Are you still in chat? Did you hear what he just said? American Airlines Miami. Yeah. You remember what happened when we were flying out of Miami? And there was that long delay? Yes, sir. I know you remember that. Well, it looks like Cenk had the same experience. It was a fucking nightmare. A nightmare. I mean, the Miami airport in and of itself is a goddamn nightmare. And then our flight was delayed. And let me say this, okay? I was getting increasingly irritated. And I did not behave this way, okay? I did not behave this way. But I did make a number of trips to the counter to figure out where the hell the plane was. And apparently what had happened was the stewardesses hadn't shown up. And they had to get a whole different flight crew from somewhere else. And so, anyway, the flight was delayed by a significant amount of time. It wasn't 3 hours. But I can totally understand, Cenk's aggravation. What I don't think was right was that he streamed and made a fool out of himself. And then he got kicked off the plane. So, thank God, Negz, we made it back in one piece. All right, let's go.
They decided, we'll make you wait 3, maybe 4 hours. There's still no plane here. Supervisor, you at least got to be honest. Is there a flight?
Okay, I will say this for the Miami airport. Okay, the Miami airport is like a little outburst of hell on United States soil. Okay, it is awful. It is a nightmare. If Negz and I ever go back to Miami, we're going to fly in and out of Fort Lauderdale because Miami is a problem, okay? But the one thing that I do love about the Miami airport is the food options, because you've got Cuban food options, and you've got really, really good food options, like really good, like almost like gourmet level food options. So while you're sitting around stewing because your flight is delayed, you can at least eat well. So that's all I'm going to say about Miami. But the airport itself, never again.
Is there a plane? You got to be honest. Is there a plane? There's never been a plane here. There wasn't one at 49A. There wasn't one at 47A.
Oh, Jen.
There isn't one at 48A. 3 gate changes, no plane. There's no plane. Where's the plane? If you guys think this is bad, wait till if that plane doesn't actually come from the hangar.
I swear to God, Negz, this is where we were sitting, waiting for that plane. I swear to you, because they changed our gate. And I think that this is where we were. Oh my God, that was so unbelievably stressful. It was awful.
20 minutes? I need to. You're a supervisor, aren't you?
Oh
Where's
God.
the plane?
I'm not going to answer your question.
No, I know, because I've been here for 4 hours.
Jank.
Don't give me this. Where's the plane? Here, I got a question for you. When did you make the decision that we weren't going to have a plane? When did you make
Jank.
that decision? Who made the decision?
Oh my God, I would have kicked his fat ass off the plane too. I wouldn't have allowed him to board. You know, because Cenk is a pretty big guy. And he's running his fucking mouth. What a dick.
Who made the decision that we weren't? It's funny to you, right? It's not funny to us. Who made the decision? Who made the decision? That's fair. Who made it? Well, who is it then? That's what I'm asking.
Oh
Whose
my
fault
God.
is it? Whose fault is it? Is there a crew? Is there a crew? Is there a crew?
By yelling, we're not going to be able to answer your question.
Okay, let me whisper it. Is there a crew? Is there a plane or a crew?
Can I just point out for everybody who's in chat who's reasonable, it is not the fault of the ticketing agents that the plane is delayed. And a lot of the times they're flying blind. They don't know what the fuck is going on. So Cenk's behavior is awful. He got dragged for it, as well he should have. And if I were American Airlines, I would put him on a list and bar him from ever flying the airline again. But that's me. That's me. Let's continue.
Your plane is already on its way from the hangar.
No, but they told us that 4 hours ago. Is it actually coming? Is it actually coming? Because I literally heard it was coming from the hangar 3 hours ago.
Oh my
I
God.
literally heard that.
And just like the great philosophical question, what happens when an unstoppable force makes contact with an immovable object? That brings us to the great philosophical question of what would happen if Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, with the kind of energy he was bringing to these American airline employees, ended up facing off against this ghetto mindset. Who would eventually win? Nobody would know, but I think the clips would be fantastic. I think the clips would be
Oh my
fantabulous,
God.
and I would love to see it. Somebody needs to make this
I
happen.
agree.
We're all rooting for you video editors out there that are better than me to make this happen, but I just want to know what you guys think about these two situations.
I loved that clip. And I wish that we had footage of Cenk getting escorted off the plane. I love it. All right, now we're going to finish up with the hullabaloo that is broken out over a meager 49 refugees from South Africa, the white refugees from South Africa, who made it to the United States and were waving their little American flags, and it was very, very cute. But one would think the way that certain people have lost their spadoinkel over this importation of 49 Afrikaners, I can't even begin to describe the hullabaloo that broke out over these 49 people making it into the United States. So once again, we're going to watch Sean because he did a good job with this. And I just wanted to remind everyone, if you've been with me for a couple of years, you've heard me say this before. Yes. I'm an ally. I'm one of the good ones. I'm one of the good ones. Yeah, I can hear him say it. I have been saying on this channel for years that the most dangerous man on the continent of Africa is Julius Malema. And we're going to see a clip of Julius Malema later. Julius Malema used to run the youth wing of the ANC, Nelson Mandela's party, and the party that has basically been in control of South Africa for decades now. An incredibly corrupt party, which is an absolute disgrace to the memory of Mandela, with a series of horrendous presidents of South Africa, from Jacob Zuma to Cyril Ramaphosa, who is the current president of South Africa. And South Africa has taken on a project much like Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe, who Julius Malema resembles very closely. He's the kind of guy who is revolutionary for years, and he draws the admiration of other tankies and so on who think that he's a great guy, gets into power, becomes incredibly corrupt, a brutal dictator. There were all kinds, okay, let me rewind a bit. I've mentioned before that I have had to see raw footage of terrible atrocities being committed in countries around the world, and you sort of get numb to it after a while. But I have seen footage that has stuck with me forever. And one of the things that I saw that made me want to get out of the news business forever was the horrendous political violence that erupted in Zimbabwe during the course of one election. And it was absolutely horrific and nightmarish. And I was so triggered by this footage that I said, that's it, I'm quitting. I'm never working in the news business again. I stuck with it, and then I had to fast forward to the raw footage coming out of Ukraine. And yet again, I said, that's it. I'm never going to work in this business again, and blah, blah, blah. I waited for a few months, and then I resigned for a number of different reasons. It wasn't just Ukraine, but it was like an accumulation of brutality and war crimes and depravity that I watched. And this is the footage that you guys do not see on the news. Okay, you might see it on Telegram, you might see it on Twitter now, but back then there were very few outlets for it. The horrible brutality that Mugabe unleashed on his chief rival Morgan Tsvangirai was a nightmare. And Zimbabwe tried this shit too. They did it under the guise of land reform, where they said, all right, we have an unequal distribution of farmland in this country. And so Mugabe basically seized it, and he promised that he was going to compensate the white farmers for their land. This never happened. So Mugabe kept quite a bit of it for himself, and then he distributed that farmland among his cronies. Well, what happened? The people that he gave this land to had absolutely no idea of how to manage a farm. They didn't have any experience doing it. And not long after this land seizure scheme was implemented, the Zimbabwean economy crashed. And it took years for Zimbabwe to recover from that damage that was done. Well, we see South Africa doing something similar now. And so but the thing is that it's not just a matter of seizing the land, right? It's not like, an armed soldier or government official comes and says, all right, well, we're taking possession. It's not like eminent domain. It's not like somebody comes along and says, all right, now this land, this property belongs to us, and you have X number of days to clear out. No, it's done with tremendous violence, and the white farmers have been targeted. And Julius Malema has been at the forefront of this campaign of brutality directed at white South Africans and white farmers, which is why I say that he is the most dangerous man on the continent now. Now that Mugabe is gone, Malema is the guy to keep your eye on. He was kicked out of the ANC back in 2013, 2014 for bringing disgrace and disrepute to the party. And so he started his own party, which is a hardcore communist party. But of course, he lives in a beautiful villa, and he enjoys all the finer things in life. But I'm telling you, keep your eye on Malema. Keep your eye on him because he's a huge, huge threat to the stability of South Africa and potentially to the stability of the continent. So anyway, let me bring this up and we will watch this video by Sean. Let's go.
There's been violence against one side of the
There has been violence against. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. I want to make a point. Violence does not equal genocide. So we need to be really, really clear about that. Because
violence does not equal genocide, huh? Well, isn't it interesting? That's true, as a matter of fact. Violence does not equal genocide. Genocide is one of those words that has completely lost its meaning because so many people are getting their definitions from TikTok and tanky college professors. But right, it's true. Violence does not equal genocide. Genocide has a very, very specific definition. And whether or not we agree that there is a genocide being carried out in South Africa at the moment, we really do need to be more precise with this terminology. I'll bet that this bitch thinks that there's a genocide in Gaza, though, right? I'm just speculating. Let's go.
Because if you look
you're
at
the
violence,
dead guy, you may not say that.
No, I would say that, actually. Because if you look at what genocide is, it is very specific that you're trying to get rid of a people, a whole group of people.
Yeah, right. And let me take this down for a second. And I'm going to play you a clip of Julius Malema singing Kill the Boer. Boer as in, the Afrikaans. And I want you to take a look at the setting where he is singing this song. And it's a very old song, by the way. He didn't write it. It's been around forever. I want you to take a look at where he's doing it, and I want you to take a look at how many people are in attendance. Let's give this a listen.
Kubi yo siya Who left guitar? Killer man. Who left guitar? Yamasa. Wata. Samarumo. Asicha. Where were you when I'm dream? Where were you when I'm hit? So fast skitty. Emoye. So fast skitty. Etati. Shoot to kill.
Shoot to kill.
Yamasa. Shoot to kill.
Shoot to kill.
Kill a man.
Kill a man.
Brr pa. Brr pa. Brr pa. Pa. Kill the Boer.
Kill the Boer.
The farmer.
The farmer.
Kill the Boer.
Kill the Boer.
The farmer.
The farmer.
Did
you notice how many people were in that stadium? Very, very frightening indeed. All right, let's go back to Sean's video. And this is a problem. This has been an ongoing nightmare for white farmers in South Africa for quite some time. And it is getting worse. It's gotten worse. So, and I just also wanted to point out something. The Boer settled in South Africa in, I believe, the 17th century. They were there for hundreds of years before the Zulu made inroads. Hundreds of years. So we are going to hear some claims about whether or not the Boers are indigenous. They are indigenous now. Their families have been farming that land or have been on that land for generations. So let's go.
There is violence in South Africa. They've had a very big uptick in violence. But black people have seen the brunt of that violence.
Okay.
Not just.
So let me ask this question of the panel.
So the Trump administration has once again broken the brains of the left-wing media by deciding to let in refugees, about 50 or 60 of them, by the way. So a very small number of them. And the problem with these refugees, if you guys haven't figured it out, is that they're Africans. And by Africans, I mean South Africans. And by South Africans, I mean the white ones.
Can we all please grow up and take a look at the map of Africa and realize that not every African is black? I had this disagreement with Bridget In sub-Saharan Africa, yes, most of the population is black. But there are white Africans. As we know, Elon Musk is a white African. These Boers and the others are white. There are white Africans. There were a lot more Indian Africans until Idi Amin kicked the Indians out of Uganda. At least he was civil enough to allow them to leave of their own free will instead of executing them. There's a big Indian population in South Africa. They are as African as any other African. And we're talking sub-Saharan. If you go north of the Sahara, if you go to the countries that border the Mediterranean, they are largely Arab and Berber. They are not black. There may be some mixing in these countries, but they are predominantly Arab. Okay? So no, the continent of Africa is not uniformly black. And anybody who insists it is just doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about.
Therefore, the mainstream media is absolutely losing their mind. They're declaring this evil white and racist. They're telling the evil orange men to stop it with the evil white racism. And that's what we're going to talk about today, because unlike many a different situation with many a different refugee, we are getting a lot of ridiculous takes from the left-wing media, because it is just decided that if you are a white person from South Africa, that you are an evil white racist and thus not worthy of admittance into the United States of America. Now, we're going to break this down. We're going to talk about this. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com.
Or brown people. We are seeing right now.
Wait a minute. I don't know what the hell happened to Ana Navarro. I don't get it, but man, oh man.
Most of that, everybody else that I can think of, are either black people or brown people. We are seeing right now Cuban mothers torn away as they are breastfeeding one-year-old U.S. citizen child and sent back to Cuba, where there is a cruel dictatorship. We are seeing Nicaraguans and Venezuelans and Haitians, where the country is held in a handbasket, and Cubans who had parole status to come into this country.
Anna, fair enough.
Told they have to leave.
Let's celebrate.
You know, Anna, I have to tell you, not you, Anna, in chat, not Anna Nicole, but Ana Navarro. You know, I have spoken about this before, that there has been a lot of tension in the Latino community, of which I am a part, thank you very much, between Cubans and everybody else. For years, the Cubans had a preferential relic of the Cold War immigration status called wet foot, dry foot, which was if you were Cuban and you came to the United States on a raft, a boat, whatever, and you were found by the Coast Guard at sea, you would get sent back. If you managed to put your foot on dry land on United States territory, you would be admitted. It was a preferential immigration program applying only to Cubans that other Latinos deeply, deeply resented. Deeply resented. And the Cubans were not humble about it, by the way. So, and there was also this very annoying tendency among the Cubans to give the impression that they're the only Latino people or the only Hispanic people to shed a tear. If you look at the history of South America and you see the brutality and the dictatorships and the military dictatorships and the lack of democracy and all the upheaval that has happened, it's very, very hard to look at Cuba and say, wow, you guys have uniquely suffered. No, all those countries in that region have suffered in one way or another. So now Ana Navarro is bitter because that special status has been taken away. And, oh well, Anna, tough.
One thing together.
So right off the top, I just want to point out that Ana Navarro is of Cuban descent, and immediately she decides to make this particular issue about the Afrikaners, the white South African refugees entering the United States, about her specific ethnic group. And to be clear, the president that actually ended the wet foot, dry foot policy for Cuban refugees in the United States of America was in fact Barack Obama.
Thank
and
God.
I'm actually not about the evil orange man not setting that back up, because in in reality, Cubans have been great contributors to the United States of America. They come into this country, they are super pro-American, they absolutely hate communism. So the idea that we would be deporting people right back to that communist hellhole, I'm not exactly on board with it.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, but yeah, Barack Obama did eliminate wet foot, dry foot. It was one of the few good decisions that he made when it came to anything involving immigration, because, again, that policy was a relic of the Cold War. And listen, I love the Miami Cubans. I do. I love them. Negz and I had a great experience interacting with Miami Cubans. And Calle Ocho is a joy. It's wonderful to go to. And I have said that if I had my druthers and I could afford it, and Negz and I were not together, that I would move to Miami and I would never speak English again for the rest of my life, because that's how much I love the Cubans. But that immigration policy was incredibly unfair. It was unfair. So let's continue.
That being said, she ends up referencing Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, and all these other different Latin nations, and it needs to be made clear to everybody out there in the audience that these are not real, legitimate, authentic asylum seekers. These are economic migrants,
right.
And we've seen case after case after case of them clogging up the asylum system, even though they explicitly tell us they're coming to the United States of America because they want welfare benefits, because they want better economic opportunities.
Or they want to
and
work.
While the economic situation in a place like Venezuela absolutely sucks, the fact is the asylum system is not meant to be for economic migration, and it's absolutely pathetic that we allowed these people for the whole 4 years of the Biden administration to go through multiple different countries on their way to the United States of America, only for them to suddenly claim asylum when they were back here.
Well, that's exactly what's happened in Europe too. You're supposed to apply for asylum in the first free country that you enter. You're not supposed to be able to walk or get transported across the continent of Europe only to then board a ferry and go to the UK and apply for asylum. They should be applying for asylum in France, in Germany, in any of those countries that they cross along the way. It's supposed to be the first country. But that's not how it works. So, yeah, I get it.
Obviously, if you're looking for safe harbor, you should claim asylum in the next safe country, which, by the way, brings
Cheryl,
us to the Afrikaners, who are essentially being turned away by each and every country they attempt to migrate back to. They are unwanted by these European nations to
which is a fucking disgrace.
Which they are descendants of. Some of them, by the way, are descendants of Europe about 400 or 500 years back.
Exactly.
Imagine if Americans told black people in this country that they can't have full rights in this nation because they're not indigenous to the Americas,
right.
Even though their ancestry goes back 400 years, a similar amount of time, and we were going to deport them back to Africa, or we expected them to deport themselves back to Africa. Obviously, nobody would tolerate that. But of course, because it's white Afrikaners, right. Everything is completely different, because these are the most evilest of the evil people, because apartheid, and isn't apartheid bad? You hear about apartheid all the time. Oh my God, apartheid, so terrible, so evil. White people that live in South Africa can never be forgiven.
America is still the country where the persecuted want to come, period.
Oh, yes, that's true.
That's the
but
American
the problem
dream.
is that the white persecuted are being allowed in,
it's still
and the black and the brown
American
are
dream.
being torn
Well, for the record, we did allow 20 million people to come here illegally, and this is 50 people. So, I mean,
I get it.
So, of course, Scott Jennings states the obvious right here, which is we're complaining about on this panel 49 people, again, like 50 people, when we let in 20 million illegal immigrants to the United States of America. But I would say, even if you were trying to be a little bit more moderate and a little bit more generous to the left wing in that particular case, you could say that they let in more Haitians into that one town in Ohio that made all the news because of the eating the dogs, eating the cats situation. Then they let in right here by at least 10-fold and 20-fold even, and we're not complaining about that. In fact, you would be accused of evil white racism if you brought up the fact that adding like 20,000 Haitians to a town that is just 40,000 people might create some issues for the residents of that town.
It might, yeah.
I get it, right? The numbers the math doesn't math, but it doesn't mean the facts of the situation are any different. I also just want to take great issue with the thinking that they are being persecuted, that they are suffering a genocide.
They are being persecuted. They are. They're having their property taken away. They are being murdered. They've been murdered for years. They have no protection from the South African government whatsoever. The South African government is rubbing its hands together in anticipation of seizing all this land. So, yeah. Okay.
Why don't they leave their homes?
Because
If everything is fine, why are they fleeing?
Because
Guess what?
don't
They
like-
want to come to America like a lot of people in the world.
Oh, the American
We
dream
have-
is working? Oh, no, that's horrible.
But we have a system to prioritize people who really need to come here.
Well, that's a debate we can have, and we are.
No,
That
that's
is
not
not
a
a
debate.
debate.
It's
Still the
the
magnet.
process.
It is the process that has been
Well, the
set
previous
for
administration had priorities about who to let in.
So again, you have Scott Jennings right here bringing logic, reason, and common sense to this particular discussion. You also get a little bit of that from Kevin O'Leary, and my favorite portion of the exchange that Kevin O'Leary got into was when he said, oh, well, you might feel differently about whether or not it's a genocide if you end up being dead. And these people are so trained to be anti-white person, anti-South African, that the woman says, no, I wouldn't feel differently if I were dead.
Violence does not equal genocide. So we need to be really, really clear about that, because if you look
If you're
at the
the
violence,
dead guy, you may not say that.
no, I would say that actually.
Which I guess is technically true,
Okay.
because if you're dead, you wouldn't feel anything. But for whatever reason, this is told to us as if it's acceptable behavior. But of course, the capper, the creme de la creme of this particular segment, comes a little bit later.
Why are Afrikaners being allowed in who are white?
Yeah.
And the Sudanese are being closed out. I'll start with you, Scott.
I don't know. I don't know if they weigh one against the other that way. I mean, I do think it's not alleged discrimination that these people are facing in South Africa. I mean, the law there absolutely allows their property to be confiscated.
Exactly.
They are subject to racial discrimination. Some have been subject to violence from some reports that I have read. I mean, we're talking about 50-something people, and the people who seem to be angriest about this today had no problem with 20 million coming here. Some of the worst people in the world coming here, including gang members and so on and so forth. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the folks who are outraged today after what happened to this country over the last several years, over 50-something people who are clearly being discriminated against in South Africa.
So again, Scott Jennings makes the case quite clear. He says it quite eloquently. But then we go to this particular woman who has been described by other people, aka Ryan Girdusky, as one of the most racist people on television, one of the most anti-white people on television, who in between the breaks would do nothing but crap on white men. So you can't wait for her take on this particular issue, and I promise you, it will not disappoint.
Wonderful.
But I think it's the reasoning for this, Allison.
Okay. So if you think about the history of South Africa, it being under an apartheid system, where I think it is 80% of the population that are Black Africans only own 4% of the land. That is because they were put in shanty towns and moved into areas where they had no rights. And so 30 plus years ago, they went through the apartheid system ended, and they reformed their constitution under the great leader of Nelson Mandela.
So just to be clear, this woman is trying to maximize the victimization of the Black Africans in South Africa by trying to do a total landmass and what percentage is owned by the populations, rather than doing what percentage of the privately owned land is owned by the Black South Africans. So the number actually goes to 15%. And again, for individually owned lands for the white South Africans, it's 72%. However, this does not include that 40% of the land in South Africa is owned by companies and or by the government.
Right.
So again, we're not actually getting an accurate picture from her. But
And reminder that the people who are known as the Afrikaners now, the Boer, moved to South Africa. They settled in South Africa in the 17th century. They have been there for centuries and many, 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 many generations. They were there literally hundreds of years before the Zulu came in. So, again, it's important to understand your history. I mean, these people, a lot of them, they have had their minds poisoned by post-colonial studies and other horseshit. Let's continue.
But of course, this is the prelude. This is the setup for her to push her racist propaganda.
And that allowed for a racial reconciliation, one that this country has yet to do. But South Africa did it, and they reformed their constitution. And part of that is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaner...
The Boer are native to that land. They are native to that land. I think that if you have been settled in an area for hundreds of years, I think that all those generations can be considered to be native to that land. You know, I wonder about this woman because we have birthright citizenship in this country, meaning if you are born here, you are an American. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's the way it works. So I wonder how this woman justifies her point of view. Does she think that immigrants who take the oath should have fewer rights than others? Does she think that people who, let's say, are living on quote unquote former native land, which is basically the entire country, do they then have to be resettled as well? Or at a certain point, when your ancestors have been living in a certain area of the world or a certain part of the country or whatever for X amount of time, at what point do we then give them the title of native to the land? They are native to the land. Their families have been there, again, for generations. Let's continue.
Honors actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also.
So look, one of the things that you guys need to understand is that labels like indigenous or natives are often just coded words for being anti-white, because the fact is many of the black Africans who now currently live in South Africa are not in fact the natives. They are the descendants of people who immigrated to South Africa because guess what? The Europeans built up that nation into a first world status when they were running it, and they went there for economic opportunity. So in reality, many of the whites in South Africa actually predate many of the blacks in South Africa. And to be clear, this is not in any way, shape, or form to justify an unequal system in the law. This is just the facts and the logic. Now, there's also people who say that there were absolutely no Africans in and around this territory. I find that to be propaganda from my research, although if somebody can actually prove that, that would be interesting to see. But the fact is, the reality of the situation is that many of these white people who are considered non-native actually descend from people who go back further to this region than the supposed native black Africans that are meant to get this redistribution.
And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave that country.
They are.
They just did.
They're leaving to come here.
No, they can
These refugees are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you against them coming here?
Holland.
Madam, their native land is not Germany. They were not born in Germany. They are South African. They are South African. And you know what? This woman, I swear to God, this is exactly what is being yelled at Jewish students on college campuses. This is what's being spread all over Twitter. Why don't you go back where you came from? To Jewish students, to Jews in general, go back to Poland, when most of us are not from Poland. We've never been to Poland. Go back to Germany, go back to where you came from. Well, I was born in the United States. Where the fuck do you want me to go? It is so unbelievably racist, so bigoted, so short-sighted. They're not from Germany and they're not from Holland. They are Africans, these white farmers. Let's continue.
Holland.
Are you against them coming here?
I'm against the hypocrisy of this administration.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you against them coming here?
If there was actually a genocide happening, like there is in other places in Sudan, in the Congo, I'm not opposed for Congolese and for the Sudanese to come to Africa, just like I'm not opposed to Venezuelans and South Americans coming to America if they are fleeing and looking for asylum. What I am
just
against,
these 50 people you're
what
against.
I am against, it's not about being against them. What I am against is that they are being given special treatment when there is not a genocide happening in South Africa.
So what you're saying is that the only way, this woman doesn't know anything about the asylum system. You don't have to be fleeing genocide to be granted asylum or to apply for asylum. That's not the way the system works. You have to prove that you are being persecuted based on a certain number of criteria, and you have to provide documentation of said persecution. It has nothing to do with genocide. Genocide can be a factor, but it's not the only factor. This woman has no idea of what she's talking about.
And they just don't like the law of the land.
Well,
So you know what they
there's-
tell
okay.
people?
But there's huge.
Again, even if you buy into the idea that every single black African is the indigenous population of South Africa, and the whites, even though they came in and built the entire country, are somehow invaders or colonizers, which, by the way, they did colonize. That's called building up a nation in a lot of cases, and therefore they have no right to live there. You could actually apply that same exact logic to black people in the United States of
Boom.
America, but nobody in this country would go for it if you said that black people whose ancestry dates back to this continent 400 years
Right.
can just leave the country if they don't like racial discrimination. I
Right.
think we would all understand that that would be wildly inappropriate. And right there, she weasels around the fact that they made changes to their constitution, and that kind of glosses over the main issue that the Afrikaners are facing, because originally, after Mandela ended up taking power, after they ended up getting rid of the apartheid system, the changes to their constitution did want to address the issues with land. However, they required expropriation of land from whites to come attached with compensation. And the reason for this is because we had an issue in Rhodesia, which became Zimbabwe,
Here we go.
where they did not compensate people. It caused the economy to collapse.
That's right.
Good, workable farmland that was actually being taken care of by whites was handed to incompetent people
That's
that were
right.
connected to the Mugabe government.
What did I just say? Yeah. It was seized by the Mugabe government and it was given out to his cronies. And the economy went down the toilet for this and other reasons.
For racial redistribution, and that ended up collapsing the country. Well, guess what? In 2025, a controversial change to the expropriation law ended up going into effect that allows white people to be dispossessed from their land without compensation.
There you go.
And again, it needs to be understood for everybody who thinks, oh, well, this is a step in the right direction. Blacks need to own more land in South Africa. We need to compensate for the crimes of apartheid. That when you forego private property rights, that leads to collapse. Zimbabwe is most known for going down this path and how it led to hyperinflation, and we would see the same disaster, not just for the white Afrikaners in South Africa, but for the blacks as well.
That's
if
right.
they go down the path of the same policies. And of course, there's all the negative cultural attitudes against white people. You have that Kill the Boer song that is often sung by the third most powerful political party in the nation of South Africa. So yeah, there's a lot of different problems with that country, and one of the things that we look for when we're determining whether or not a people could be victimized, slaughtered, or actually affected by genocide.
I mean, that Kill the Boer song, it's the South African equivalent of Mein Kampf. It's not like Julius Malema has made a secret of what his intentions are. Julius Malema has been very upfront about what his goals are and what he wants to do. And what his party wants to accomplish. So people can write it off and say, oh, you know, it's just people getting a little bit carried away at a political rally. Absolutely not. That's not at all what it is. So honestly, if I were a white farmer, or if I had white skin in South Africa, I would be making my exit plans as quickly as possible. Because nobody's going to come and save you. Certainly not anybody from the South African government. And again, this is a situation that has been unfolding for decades.
Is things like dispossession of property without compensation. This, by the way, is something that the Nazis did to the Jews prior to the Holocaust. This is something that the Turks did to the Armenians prior to the Armenian genocide. So it's not crazy for us to say, hey, you know what? If you're feeling uncomfortable because your private property rights, specifically based on your race/ethnic origin, are being taken away, then you can become a refugee to other parts of the world. But again, these are the least sympathetic potential refugees on planet Earth right now. There are not a lot of countries that are willing to take these people in. So essentially,
which is a fucking disgrace. I'm going to say it again. Countries not willing to take in the Boer or the Afrikaners. It's just an outrage.
You're in a situation where you're watching the slow steps of their rampant demonization. And by the way, they keep getting blamed for all the problems in South Africa,
Of course.
even though it's clearly and obviously the consequences of the new government completely mismanaging the place.
Yep.
And yeah, that could lead to an environment where these people are facing a genocide or are facing an ethnic cleansing campaign. And that is quite troublesome. I actually do agree that as of right now, we're not quite there yet. But the fact is, there's definitely factions within the South African government that are gaining more influence, by the way, that want to push in that direction.
Exactly.
Now, look, overall, I actually am not sure about the compatibility of Afrikaners culture with American culture. We're talking about 50 refugees. So in my opinion, it would be smart for the United States of America to try to facilitate, if they're going to be refugees, their return to their ethnic homeland, which happens to be Europe, because I think they would probably blend better there because they have all the different cultural